Hello everybody, I hope you're keeping safe and well. So I just wanted to go through my daily-ish collage journal that I've been keeping since March, and it's a sea white travel journal, and it has these good paper, good quality thick paper, and a pouch at the back and a page tab. So I just want to go through fairly quickly. So I use in these pages, I use mixed media, including collage and text, inks, graphite pencils, coloured watercolour pencils, watercolour, anything really. And I'm going to, after I've been through the pages, I will show you how I do one of these. So all the sorts of detailed questions hopefully will be answered through that. So I use text, as I say, and inks and so on. Charcoal, make my own papers to create these, and that's the Inktense watercolour pencils I was talking to you about. I use a dip pen for some of the line work. Handmade papers again, sometimes I use stencils. I'm drawing with the ink, and sometimes I'm spraying to create an effect with water. I'm using stencils to create patterns. This is a paper pattern. Not all of the papers I make, sometimes I've got bought pieces or collected pieces. Sometimes use maps as well as text. This is a quote, a poem. Sometimes use acrylic paints as well. Papers, inks. I'm always looking to create difference, so if I'm having a block of text, I want something quite in contrast to that. So if I've got this shape here, I'll have a very different shape next to it. So this orange here, this line, ties in with the paper with the orange in the paper and the blue, but it's also quite different. This is watercolour, and again you can see the differences in shapes, open areas, patterns in contrast, lines that are different to the chunkiness of the shapes. This was inspired by tulips, again using text. You can see the contrast of similar shapes but very different size, and that's an outline, that's a solid. Hopefully you can see the variety I'm trying to create. Watercolour, paint. That's a double page spread. Sometimes I use 2/3 of the paper. It depends really. You can see there I'm leaving white space. This one shows how I'm playing with contrasts. Opposites in the colour wheel, purple and yellow. Breathable space. Lots of line work. I like to sometimes include drawings with the collage. This one is very textured because I've built up layers of paint and patterns. This one is much simpler, but you can see this very fine line against this real solidness of the simple design there. And then finally this one, which is a real in-depth, lots of layering going on, line work, paint. This is acrylic paint, which is why it's peeled off there. These are oil pastels, inks and so on. So a real sort of mix and energy there. So now what I want to do is to demonstrate how I create one of these pages. So I'm just going to show you briefly how I do these simple collages. So first of all, I limit myself, so I don't have endless different materials. So I limit myself to just having a couple of pieces of collage. So I'm probably going to use something like those two. And if I'm using text, I kind of add that in as well. So I might put that in. And then I have some other different bits and pieces. So here today, I'm going to use some ink, a coloured Inktense pencil, and either, I haven't decided yet, this graphite or this pencil to create some different sorts of marks. So the point is to create different marks. I've got some other sort of things just to apply the things with, and I may or may not add some paint. So I'm going to get started. So I'm using gloss medium to, you don't have to, but I'm just using gloss medium to stick down the papers. So so this hasn't been sort of thing, so you have to kind of come through with me on my thinking process. So I'm always trying to kind of create difference in the way that I'm putting things down. So that's very sort of straight, that's been cut with scissors, and this is very sort of torn. So that kind of creates quite a nice, and that one I'm going to put an angle there. So I should say that, so all I'm going to do this really quickly, so I'm going to put it straight onto the thing. I don't always do this. And I want this to sort of stick down really firmly. So I may well put gloss medium over the top, but it's not essential. It just kind of puts it in place without any. And you can just use tracing paper over it. I'm not going to today. I'm just going to very briefly use a bone folder. Might not stick down so well, but that's usually if I put gloss medium over it afterwards, that makes it very wet. It catches the bits that haven't been stuck down. And then I've just got to do this. So again, quite often I have things hanging over the edge because I quite like that on this little sketchbook. So as you can see, I'm just trying to stick it down, use the bone folder to smooth out any wrinkles. Bear in mind that this is in a sketchbook, so it's not as essential and critical as if you're using them, incorporating them into a painting. You don't have to use gloss medium, you can use anything. For these sketchbooks, you can use PVA, or you can use Prit or anything like that. So I've got those two there now, and I should say that this, I've kind of had this, sometimes I don't have anything in particular in mind, but recently I've been seeing the foxgloves out on the paths, so those are kind of an inspiration for me for this piece. So I'm now going to, I want something different to what's already there, so I want to try and create something that gives me the impression of these foxgloves. And I'm always amazed at these big strappy leaves, so I'm sort of probably added too much ink there, but I did say to you, didn't I, that if I need to kind of clean it up, I can do so with some paint. Having said that, it would require some drying, so that might not be possible in the video time. And I like that because it's created quite a different effect to what I already had there. And also it's taken away, let me just get some tissue, from the obviousness of the foxglovey thing. I'm just blotting that just so that I don't, kind of want some over it because I don't want it to look too flat, but I want it to dry, so I'm going to leave that there for now. So what I've got now is some open lines and things, so I'd quite like to have some more messy and a different sort of mark, and this is quite nice because you do going to get more of a density by doing something like that. Although having said that, it's kind of similar to what's gone on there. So what I want to do now is something quite different to what I've already got. And one of the things I'm thinking that's coming to mind as I'm doing this is that when I'm looking at foxgloves out in the landscape, they're often on the hedge or on the sides, and always there are these wires of the fence line. So I'm going to start, so it's another very different mark. So hopefully you can see that, and it may be that you often get more than one going on. I quite like that. I'm going to put another one. Don't want them too even. be careful because this is all quite wet, but I quite like acting quite spontaneously, so I don't tend to want to dry them in these sketchbooks, but you do get these sort of that's actually quite different to what's already gone on there. And then I think I do want to actually add some text, even though I kind of forgot to add that before. And I'm kind of going to probably just put it, I'm going to put it flat ways because I haven't got that. Oh, actually I quite like that. And I might have it so that it's kind of going over, sticking out a bit, because I sometimes do that. So I'm just going to stick that there. So again, this is using the gloss medium. And this is actually just from, and this actually says something about, sometimes I do this, I do some quite literal things. So this is about foxgloves, this is what this talks about. This is the dictionary entry for digitalis, which is what foxgloves is. So I kind of, what I've got is quite a lot of busyness and then some open spaces. So I'm kind of okay with it, but I might just simplify it. And sometimes I just like to mess it up a bit. Sometimes I just like to do that. So, quite like doing that because I've got that's a solid bit then, a solid bit of colour against. And that's the advantage of using a watercolour pencil. And I might just do a bit more of that actually. So I've got a bit of a solid. Solidness to it, and then I'm finally going to add some, that's it, I'm going to finally just add some white paint. It's still quite wet, so I'm going to be a bit careful. You can add, I'm using acrylic, but you could use gouache. Might want to just pale this a bit, but I don't want it to disappear completely, so I've kind of I've added some water to the paint so it doesn't, because it's quite opaque, this paint. So just want it to push it back a little bit rather than, and then I'm going to add it so that I've got some, I'm going to add it opaquely to actually take away, and I might then draw back into it if that makes any sense. So I've got, this is nice and open, but I just didn't want all that density at the bottom, and it kind of smudges, which is quite nice as well. So that already feels better for me, and I might just do what I usually do, which is to sort of scribe into it. I'm just trying to, so I might just messed it up a bit, but I quite like that. It's not too precious. So hopefully you get the impression of what I'm trying to sort of achieve. And you can see the variety of different marks that you can get with a different bit of green here. And I'll leave that there. So I've had a look at this now that it's a little bit drier, and I'm reckoning it just kind of needs a bit of oomph, something a bit sort of light touched. So I'm going to add some splashes of pink, and I've just made a mix of some pink. You could use gouache, you could use watercolour. This is what I'm using is transparent acrylic, but it doesn't really matter. And I made a mix with some water, and I've just got an old toothbrush, and I'm just going to literally just splatter it on. So I think that that now is enough.